Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
We are an awesome family duo, but more importantly, we have a very special speaker. Jason, who do we have coming on?
Well, before you do that, I wanted to acknowledge those that are watching us on YouTube that we have another co-host today. We have little Scotty on Scott's chest. She is a whopping, 10 days old? And so we have another co-host today, which is awesome to have her. Our special guest, though, is Dr. Jeff Norman, someone I've known for a very long time. He is a chiropractic physician, an author, a speaker, all-around good guy, a father, and is currently the owner of Wellspring Advanced Health. He has authored one book we're going to talk about today, Overcoming Burnout, 7 Steps to Rekindling the Fire and Living Passionately engaged in your life. And he's got another book, believe it or not, that's coming out here the first part of the next year. It's called The Healing Power of Laughter. Welcome to our podcast, Dr. Norman.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, really.
It's such a treat to get to talk to you. The healing power of laughter fits you. I remember coming to your office multiple times, and I would hear your laugh before I'd hear anything else when you were coming to see me and to work on me.
That we found, well, I'll go back way back when I was just freshly 12 years old. And my father went through what I would describe as the mother of all midlife crises, and he packed his bags and he left. He left my mom destitute and to raise 6 kids on her own. We didn't have him in our lives very much for the next few years. That's all good and well now, and we're happy together now. But I remember being 12 years old and being, torn apart, and I thought to myself, well, this life's hard. So you can either cry about it or you can laugh. I'm going to choose to laugh. And that's just really been sort of a deeply ingrained part of me from a very young age. And the book, The Healing Power of Laughter, really is. I'm very proud of it. When you all get to see it, you're going to see it's really good. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and it'll help you change your life. So I'm proud of that one for sure.
Good. And we're going to put a link, or at least some reminder for people in the bottom of there about that when it's coming out. And we'll probably even change the show notes when it does come out and give people a link that obviously will probably be available at Amazon or maybe some other places available. Let's talk a little bit about your first book, and Overcoming Burnout. At the beginning of that book, you talk about going to the office. And I don't know whether that's the chiropractic office or where it was, or tell me a little bit about it. You're sitting in the parking lot and not wanting to go to work. Now, that's not ever happened to anybody else. So let's be clear that no one's ever been sat in their truck or something and say, I don't want to get out. I don't want to get out. I don't want to go in the office. Tell us a little bit more about what happened.
The story goes back to 2002. I was involved in a catastrophic car accident. I was pronounced dead. 20 minutes later, I'm here again and extricate myself from my vehicle as the emergency crew was helping the other vehicle. And I had broken my neck and herniated discs and had head trauma and all sorts of things, but that was easy to deal with. What was tough was a year later, my kidneys went into failure. A year later, I had bowel resection. I lost my health. And I was told after the diagnosis of my kidneys, if I didn't get either a transplant or go on dialysis by the end of the year, I would die. And that didn't set well with me. You know me, Jason. I am both very optimistic and also very rebellious. So I've coined the term reoptibellious. I'm very reoptibellious. And I just didn't sound right to me, to my very core, that I had to do those things that year. So that's what put me on kind of a new pathway in the way I saw healthcare and taking care of your own health. But 9 years later, I still had those same kidneys. I had run multiple triathlons and all kinds of things. But on the day you're talking about, I pulled up to my office, my clinic, in my truck, and I was so spent, so worn out, so beyond fatigued, something I'd never known before. And I couldn't physically get myself to climb out of that truck and go in the office. And I began to cry like a child. I mean, I saw the tears were just coming down, and it was something I had never experienced before. And I was really grateful that I was the first one at the office and no one could catch me in that act. But after some time, I pulled myself together and I called my nephrologist before I went into the office. And he knew what was going on. He knew the kidneys had given up the ghost finally and for good, and tried to admit me into the ICU. And I refused to go. I had to go to work. But I did start dialysis several days later, and the rest is history. But I was burned out. I was spent. That's the story. And I think in the book, I even tell you, I don't tell you this to impress you, but I say this to impress upon you that I know what I'm talking about. I was there. My tank was empty. I had nothing left to give, nothing. And I think that I'm not alone in having had that experience.
Absolutely. Most of the listeners and the guests that we have on our podcast are entrepreneurs. They're in business for themselves. And I had one friend that joked, he says, being in business for yourself is awesome. You only need to work half days. The only hard part is which 12 hours do you work, right? And so I think a lot of people go through that. A lot of our listeners go through that, whether they're W-2 or not. I mean, they still go through that burnout. And so walk us through a little bit. Give us some, snippets, some golden nuggets, if you will, because there are 7 steps that you talk about in your book, 7 different things. I don't know if you want to go through all of them or not. We don't want to give everything away. We want people to read the book.
Right.
But give us a little bit of some lessons that you would share with people, what's going to happen. I mean, it's part of life.
Well, I think for me, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people go into a feeling of burnout. I mean, it's got its own diagnosis code now from the medical side of things. Burnout has its own diagnosis code. But I think what's important over all of the small things that come to be, like not feeling like we're appreciated, not feeling like we're part of community, not feeling like there's a number of things that come together. But I think to me, excuse me, the thing that's the very most important is that from childhood, we have been sold a bill of goods. We have been told what success is. We didn't get to define that for ourselves. We were told the pathway we should take to get to success. And we believe it because the people who told us that were the ones we trusted, right? And they had been sold a bill of goods. So most of us go through our life sacrificing the things that really, truly matter the most to us. And whether we get to that Mercedes Benz and the big house and all the extra money, whether we get there or not, most of us are dissatisfied and empty because we gave away everything that was most valuable to us to try and get to something that wasn't that important. Now, there's nothing wrong with the big house and the car. You know me, I had that Mercedes S550, and I love that car like a child, like a girlfriend, like I don't know what, but I sold that car because I decided it was unhealthy to love a car that much. But those things are wonderful in and of themselves. They're not bad. I had the big house and I had all that, but that's not happiness. Money's a tool. It doesn't buy happiness. It makes being miserable much more fun. But as a tool, money is power. And if we look at it and use it correctly, then it can bring us to a state of happiness. Dean Graziosi, the one thing I can remember about an interview I watched with him is he said, to those who say that money can't buy happiness, I say you've never put a well in an African village and you've never built a school in South America. See, money's a tool, and if you use it correctly, it can bring great joy because I think that's really why each of us is here on the earth. And if you don't mind, I'll get into that a little bit.
Please.
We've chased after the wrong things for most of us. Some people, that car really is what brings them, that's their greatest desires. But for most of it's quality time with family, it's experience, it's people. And those are the things we sacrifice first to go try and make our millions. So I think if we sit down and we try and discover what true success is for us, we got to go through a pattern of things. And I believe very wholeheartedly that each of us has a destiny, a reason we're here. And the way I define destiny, and if you're taking notes on here, I would write down these letters in big, bold letters, GITPD. Your destiny is the gifts, the ideas, the talents, the passions, and the dreams that have been given to you by God, if you ask me, by the internal, the universe, there's other people, but it was given to you and you only to accomplish something special. And that is what we have to discover. Now, to get there and to find that success, we've got to understand a few things about the way our brains work. The reticular activating system is a collection of neurons in the base of the brain, and basically it filters everything out and keeps on the forefront of our minds what is supposed to be most important. If we don't control what goes in there, other people will control it for us. So it's, advertisers know this very well. They throw jingles at us. I mean, if I say to you, this hasn't been used in probably over 30 years, but if I say to you, you deserve a break today, what am I talking about?
Wendy, Coca-Cola or Pepsi.
Well, you're close.
But
break today, so get up and get away to McDonald's.
Oh,
Haven't
that's right. It was McDonald's.
Yeah, Scott, you weren't even born when that slogan was created and said, yet most people know it pretty well. They have the world, people, advertisers, they have a way of putting in our reticular activating system things that keep on the forefront of our mind. And so if you're not happy in life, chances are you're living by someone else's important things. We call that the hierarchy of values. So you got to discover, what are those list of things that are really the most important to you? What's your hierarchy of values? And if you can keep those things in the forefront of your mind, it makes it a lot easier to discover what success is to you. And by the by, if you wrote down those letters, under those letters, I would write a few more. I would write GETPAID. Because if you discover your destiny with your gifts, ideas, talents, passions, and dreams, you're going to get paid. That's how you make money, and many times large, vast sums of money, by doing the things that are most important to you, the things you were put on this earth to do. So that's the kickoff of Burnout. Now, Burnout's a lot more lighthearted book than one I just dumped on you, but I have throughout the book, exercises you can do to help discover these things in each chapter. And that was kind of a conglomeration of one of the chapters there.
You have made it wasn't recently, it's been a few years ago, you made a radical change in your life as far as what you were doing. You were a practicing chiropractic physician and very, very good at what you did. Very, very good. The only complaint that I had is your office was always cold. Other than that, I mean, there were people people were beating down the doors to come and see you. I mean, people come from all over the place to come to your place, and you decided to step away from that and start doing some other things. And now you've come back to a health clinic. Tell me a little bit about that. What goes on there? First
of all, let me tell you why the clinic was so cold. 11 years ago now, I got a kidney from my sister. And that surgeon, I am convinced, gave me also one of her ovaries, because I have been in menopause since I had surgery. And so it was all because no one wants a big sweaty doctor working on them. So all those poor ladies in the staff had to dress warmly, because I did keep the office cold.
I thought you were going to tell me your sister was hot and that's why you were warm.
And that sounds really creepy, but that would go. Yeah,
it does.
And so that was number one. Yeah, we had a 7-figure clinic, which in the chiropractic world is in the top 10% of all clinics. We had all kinds of things going on. There are a lot of people on this planet because we had that clinic that we saved lives. It was really, really more than just an adjustment of the spine. It was so much more. And it was really a lot of fun. But I got to a point where I was traveling 3.5 days a week, speaking and training and consulting, and then coming back to the clinic 3.5 days a week. And I was doing everything I told everyone in the book about burnout not to do. And I was struggling. I had felt for some time that I was not supposed to be practicing anymore in that traditional sense, and that there were other things I needed to do. But I tried to keep my foot in both ponds, if you will. And it was difficult. And I was back east and it was a Sunday morning, and I was driving to the airport in Pittsburgh, and I was spent again. I was tired, and I was unfulfilled because I was trying to do things I shouldn't. And this is a very personal, and this is maybe a religious thing people don't want to hear, but I looked up to the ceiling of my rental car and I talked to my maker. I talked to God as if I could see him in the roof of that car. And I just said, I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting you. Tell me what to do. And I think there are times in our lives when we just have to get to a point where we need to let go of what we think is best and just listen. And once again, tears flowed, and I blame that now on the ovary when tears flow. But I got to the airport and I returned that car and I called my wife and I said, buckle up. We're selling the home, we're selling the clinic, we're moving to our vacation home in St. George, which is the south of our state, right? And my wife is a wonderful girl. She just said, okay. And that's what we did. We sold the clinic, and within a few months, everything was gone and sold, and we came down here to start new. So doing things that I felt like we were more destined to do, if I can keep using that word, destiny. So I came down here and I finished several other books that I use more within the clinical setting. One on my shelf over here is called, I call it the green book, the white book, the blue book. You know, here's Burnout. This was first. That's the white book. The green book is Achieving Your, what is it called? Achieving Your Best Health Naturally. It's a health-related book. I have one that's from a religious standpoint called Joy of the Saints. And now Laughter. The healing power of laughter is really the pinnacle of all of it. It's the first one I started. It's the last one I finished. But that's part of what we came down here to do. So it's not, it's scary to chuck everything and start fresh. It is.
Yeah, I was shocked when you told me that that's what you were doing. I know that the house that you had at the time was a very nice place to live. You were comfortable. Your wife really liked that house. Seemed like there was even some, I don't know, divine intervention for you to even get the place. And so you really felt blessed that you had it, and then to walk away from that was like, is this getting nuts?
Yeah,
I'm almost thinking,
and following those impressions, and things always work out in the end, but it doesn't mean things are easy. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
no, I don't know that I had anything profound to say.
Looking back at this transitional event where you finally, as my friends like to say, is let go and let God step in. Looking back, was there something that you would have changed? Maybe the timing, maybe have done it faster, or maybe there were certain actions that even then you were still learning to let God.
Yeah, that idea of letting God prevail is a gorgeous idea, but it's not always easy to do, and especially not for me because I'm hard-headed. And you know, I told you about that rebellious nature I have. And you know, a lot of us out in this part of the country, we come from pioneer stock. And pioneers were resilient and they took care of themselves. And so asking for help is a very difficult thing. I'd like to say that I wish I would have done things quicker, because after I realized what my destiny was, I read it out loud to myself and it scared me. And I opened my desk drawer and I shoved it under papers and I buried it. And there it sat for almost 18 months till I rediscovered it and pulled it out and looked up at the ceiling again. And I said, I can't promise you that I'll find success here, which is silly because we don't control the outcomes, right? We can only control what we put into it. We can become input managers, but we can't be outcomes managers. We can't control the outcomes. That's something that God does. If we're talking religious, I didn't plan on this becoming a religious discussion. I apologize. But I looked up and I said, I can't guarantee success, but I promise you I will do everything in my power. And doors began to open. People came into my life that you know, never would have been there otherwise. So, I mean, I have on the jacket of my upcoming book, I think there are 7 best-selling authors who have read it and praised that book. And it's just so heartwarming to me because I'm just this doofus that makes fun of everything in life and has bad teeth. and a girl's kidney. So it's very humbling to me to have that happen. But for Scott, I think I'd like to have moved faster, but I don't think I was the person I needed to be yet to move faster. And so whenever I second guess myself, I have to remind me that it's all a journey, it's a process. And even the bad decisions we make, the things we wish we wouldn't have done, they become the lessons that create a new person, that make us into who we need to be to achieve the things we're supposed to achieve. So in that sense, I'd say no, I wouldn't have done anything differently. So, and number two, I run on at the mouth, so I apologize. Jason, wave your arms in the hands when it's time for me to shut up. That's fair.
No, I always love talking to you. You have some good wisdom. And again, with this whole podcast, as we've been going about this, it's evolved a little bit. Our initial thing is we want to talk to people that are in the process of accumulating, enjoying, and passing on their wealth, and to find out the secrets, the ups and downs that people have had, and what's been their successes, what's been their failures, who have been key people on their team, what has been their mindset or their heart set, and how that has changed in their journey. Because we all have a journey, I think, to some degree. Looking back, obviously your wife has been a true sport, a true supporter, willing to pick up, move away, do whatever. Other than that, who would you say are some key people that have been part of your team, if you will, that have been there for you to help you to be successful? You can say me, but that's okay. We'll go on.
Jason Henderson has been a big inspiration. No, Jason, you know how highly esteemed I hold you. I hold you in very high esteem and trust you with many things I wouldn't trust others with. So I really, truly, I appreciate our friendship and admire you in so many ways. Probably one of the first people that helped me along was just my mom. And I guess everyone would say that about their mom, but this is a woman who picked up the slack and raised 6 kids when she had nothing. And she did not become the mother who felt guilty and let us get away with murder. And so we all had troubles. She was a woman who held it together when her heart was broken and raised children that toed the line. She taught me. She taught me what it was to be a man. To be a man. She didn't tell me the crying part was part of it, but she's the one who taught me what a man should be. And I remember before I went down to grad school and I was scared, I was nervous. I said to her, Mom, I'm going to go down to Los Angeles. It's dangerous down there. I'm taking my wife and my 2-year-old son, and I'm going to go to school for 4 years. I'm going to get out in massive debt and have no job at 30 years old. And I was looking for someone to stroke me, pat me on the head. And she just looked at me and she said, Jeff, you're going to be 30 years old either way. So just decide what the hell you want to do and do it. And she wasn't a cursing woman. So that just shook me. But that was part of her. She knew how to put her arms around you, but she also knew how to give you proper advice when you needed a swift kick. And so she would be number one. Number two, I would say, coaches in any industry are really important. Coaches, mentors. And, really, when you're ready, that teacher will come. And you don't have to look very far to find that person to help mold you and coach you. And then you outgrow that person's a gift to you and you move on to the next one. When I decided where I was going to go, that I was going to write books, that I was going to do more speaking, that I was going to share what I thought was important with the world, I actually stalked this man. He is probably the number one best known chiropractor in the world. He's the one that goes on the Dr. Oz show and Dr. Phil, and his name is Fabrizio Mancini. And he was the youngest college president in the United States. He's a chiropractor. He's just a brilliant and loving man. And I stalked him and showed up at a conference because I knew he'd be there. We had met a couple of times before, and he had an uncanny ability to remember people. So I stalked him. I went there and I asked him some questions about where I was going, and he was very gracious and helpful. And 2 hours later, he called me back on the phone. And he said, "Are you still here? I want to meet with you." And he just invited me into a little inner circle of his people that were trying to get in. He invited me to be a part of this great little think tank and opened all kinds of doors for me. And those things will happen when you put your heart in the right place and you move forward out of your comfort zone. I know I listen to some of your podcasts. I love that you guys just don't focus on what's the best vehicle to put your money in, but that state of mind and what's in your heart and your intent are important in wealth and wealth management and what you're going to do with your life. I'm a big believer that when you leave your comfort zone to make things happen, to achieve something new and become something new, people will come into your life that you need. And so, yeah, Fab Mancini is one that has been a great, tremendous help of mine. There's another friend I made. He's a London-based chiropractor, owns 9 clinics. He speaks on the European Rich Dad, Poor Dad circuit. He's just a brilliant man. His name is suddenly escaping me, Ryan Reeder. That's another one that I really value his advice and his love for the people he serves. And that's really the hallmark of the people that at least I've been involved with. Les Brown, when he calls me on the phone, I become like one of those girls waiting outside the hotel for the Beatles. And these people impact you without knowing you, but when they know you, it's even more profound. So I would say those kind of people have been the most impactful, without excluding some of the most important. And patients that I have worked with, people's lives that I've been a part of in clinic have been profound to me. And I write about one of them in the burnout book. In Laughter, I include some of those stories from other patients because people's lives, everyone has a story. And people's lives are fascinating, and there are stories of triumph everywhere. So those people, my patients, have been a big influence on me.
Is it safe to assume that some of those patients that you talk about in your books are still friends and reach out to you occasionally, exchange Christmas cards and etc.?
Absolutely. It's been really fun moving to St. George. I still get phone calls, several a month when people come down, they come to visit me. Now that we've opened a new clinic, which I didn't think I would have, ever do again. We've opened a new clinic and they stop in and say hi, and it's like a family reunion. I really love it. That's been a lot of fun.
So are you doing chiropractics there? I was understanding that it was a little bit different than that.
Yeah, it is. We still have the ability to do all that stuff I've always done. You know how I had technology in with the tried and true chiropractic care as well, and all the injections and other different things that I could do. But our focus with my illness, with my kidney transplant and all the medications that come with that, it's a very common thing. In fact, it's expected. Type 2 diabetes and neuropathy become a part of your life. And I had been around long enough and through this to go, this isn't going to happen. I'm not going to be a diabetic. And so when I became one, I had to get really expert at reversing type 2 diabetes and finding out what's at the heart of that disease. And with the traditional care, what's good about it and what's not good about it. And I'm telling you, I've worked with type 2 diabetics and people with neuropathy now the last couple of years on an ever-growing scale. And so I was doing mostly telemedicine just so I could keep control of my time. But I just felt directed, and we've opened a beautiful office here. And we're just now moving from purely telemedicine to bringing people in the office to help them with those things. Type 2 diabetes, neuropathy, both are life-changing and potentially early life-ending problems, and we can reverse those and keep people on the planet and living the lives they always dreamt of. Nobody thought they would retire and have to sit in a chair because they couldn't walk, because their balance was gone, because they're headed for transplant or rather amputation of a foot, and we can change all of that. So that's what we do. And being the guinea pig, you know what? I know what works and what doesn't. So
I love it.
yeah.
What in the event you could, kind of sum things up as we kind of go towards the end of this, I want you to just say a few words there. I also want to kind of hear, there's been some really stellar things that have happened for you, and you've been very victorious. Never have I ever felt like that you've been a whiner or a complainer. You're questioning and you're feeling and you're learning all the time, yet you always seem to have an attitude of, I'm going to I'm going to prevail. I'm going to make this happen. Tell me a little bit about maybe a failure. I mean, you sound so wonderful and everything. Is there a failure that you'd say, this is one thing and I wished I would have done it different? Or this is what I learned from it?
Yeah, which there's lots of them, because I have a saying that I like. It's called fail forward faster, because I fail all the time. I make mistakes. You know me, you know what a flawed man I am, right? I make all kinds of mistakes. So which kind of failure do you want? A business failure?
Yeah.
Do you want financial failure?
Financial or business. Yeah, that would be great.
This has been a difficult year for me, because I made some decisions to put aside one thing and to move more towards another. And it did not go the way I wanted. And I sacrificed a lot for this that failed for me. And it was very painful for me. Probably the biggest failure in business by far I've ever had. Now, one of the things I was doing was I was consulting for some companies, and I was training doctors across the country how that they could improve the balance in their patients through more than just exercises. And balance is, a fall is the number one fear of the elderly. It's the number one reason they go into nursing homes. It is the number one cause of injury death in the elderly. And my mom ultimately died from a fall. And if I had known what I know now, I could have seen all the early signs for her. So I was teaching doctors how to do this, and I just got this stroke of genius. Hey, let's open a business that does not require doctors to be there and all the red tape. Let's open a business that's all about improving people's balance. And I sunk a great fortune into this and developed this business, and then quickly realized that my business expertise was not in a non-clinical sense. And I didn't realize that after all the money I sunk into it, it was a drop in the bucket that you need to open a franchise business such as that. And so after spending a great deal of the money I had amassed, I closed that business up and I brought it into this clinic that we have now, but it's not our great focus, because I needed things that I don't have to make that. I still think it's a wonderful idea.
So where's the
but I
mistake?
didn't have all the business expertise and the financial backing to make it work.
So you didn't understand the business good enough? Would that be one of the mistakes? And didn't have a guide to help you along that? I mean,
Yeah, I
in the
thought,
event you could do it over, what would have made it so you could be more successful? Other than having, I mean, we can have all kinds of money. I can tell you stories of people that I know that have had, started a business with millions upon millions, and still, there's other things. What would maybe have made it go better?
I wish I would have created it, developed it before I went forward to open it. I had a conversation with a man named Michael Gorton, who was a serial billionaire. I think 11 companies he started and sold for over 1 billion companies. And I become friends with Michael, and I called him one day and I said, listen, this is my idea. And I sent you some information. He said, I really love it. This is amazing. I had no idea about all of this. But he said, I have one question for you. How are you going to get the word out? And I just thought, same way I've always done all my clinics, all my businesses. And I sunk a great deal of money into marketing that I never had to as a clinician. And what I had was not enough. I wish I had created it more conceptually, and then gotten a team on board that knew the areas that I didn't know better, because that's the key, right? The key, one of the great keys to success, as far as I'm concerned, is relationships. I needed to bring in people who knew that world better than me. As far as training, teaching, and restoring the balance, I'm an expert. But running that kind of a business, starting it up, promoting it, and growing it into a franchisable business, that's not my expertise. And I should have had that on board before I started, because that was the death knell. I had people wanting this franchise. One man in Dallas was waiting for 3 of them, but we had to have it. We had to have it fully figured out first. So that idea is not dead and gone, the Balance and Performance Centers of America, but it is just sort of on the boilerplate in this office of mine, incorporated with Wellspring. So that's what I would have done. That's what I would recommend.
So it's a key person of the team, right? I just loved your answer for the fact of what we talk about. We talk about that mastering your millions all starts in your mind and with your team. Make sure they're the best, right? We're going to hear Scott say that in the outro here in a few minutes. There's key people in your team, right? And when you don't have the key person, that can be the difference between failures and success. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, that is difficult to admit. most entrepreneurs, their theme song is nobody does it better, right? I can do it all. No one does it better than me, and I can make it happen. I figured it out to this point, blah 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 blah, blah, right? And so I love your answer that you said, well, some key people that maybe be able to help me in, some key persons, and maybe even being willing to give up some ownership. Not that I'm telling you to do that. I'm just like, we hold our baby so close, our business, and sometimes it's so tight that we pass by opportunities. We pass by people and relationships that can make or break us. And you're right. The best way to grow business is to increase our relationships.
And that's where I failed. I didn't bring on and incorporate people who knew that area far better than myself. So yeah, that's I haven't told many people that raw story because it still hurts. It was hard for me to accept that I had failed in that venture down here and had spent all that money that I had spent on there that I didn't plan on spending, you know. So yeah, absolutely.
And something else to point out to those of you who are new at this and just putting your feet in on entrepreneurship, you're going to have the failures. And the fact of the matter is, he did fail. We should focus on that. He did fail, which means he took action. Because you can always correct action. You can't correct inaction.
And that's the truth. You know, you've got to be willing to, got to be willing to act and to move and to go. And, you know, it really, everything important is an action verb anyway, right? Entrepreneurship to me, that's an action word. Love is an action word. You gotta move, you gotta act, and you gotta do. And you can't just expect things are going to fall into place. And when they don't, you can't get discouraged and walk away just because things are hard. It's a matter of learning and becoming and doing. And really, isn't that the key to everything? Dying, I don't think dying's a tragedy. Not really. I think what the tragedy is dying without having lived, dying without having said, I love you, dying without having repaired relationships. That's where tragedy lies. And I think if we focus on those things along this path of doing these things, God, like you said, to be an entrepreneur, that's the secret to success and happiness in this life, because we all have an expiration date. It's going to end at some point. We know that. So we just need to keep acting and doing. I love it.
Awesome.
I'm a blowhole, aren't I?
No, you're awesome. Dr. Norman, what is the next mountain you're going to climb? We ask all our guests this, and tell them to put it out to the universe, however you want to say it, and then also invite you to come back and be a guest when that's successful, when that happens. What's that going to be for you?
Well, I will tell you this thing that we do with type 2 diabetes and neuropathy, it needs to be, I need to bring on people who I can teach to do it so I don't have to do it anymore, so that I can move forward. Secondly, and my business partner now, right, I wised up a little bit. He just pulled into the parking lot. We will be finishing this weekend our recording studio in our office so that we can just walk in and hit the record button, and we can create content for people. You know, we call it the give value track. We want to give value. We want to just give snippets of things we can do. What can you do at home for this issue or that? And then as well as creating a podcast, we're going to start it around burnout and bring on all these wonderful people I've come to know and trust and love who changed my life. And so we're going to do our own little podcast starting up here very, very soon.
Love it.
So that's the next thing for us. And then when Laughter comes out, I'm very proud of that book. I hope to be able to free myself of a lot of this and spend some time promoting that nationally, because
well, come back on the podcast and tell us more about it. I know we don't want to let too much out of the cat out of the bag out now, but when it does come out and it's published, why don't you contact us and come and celebrate with us? Say, hey, my latest book has been published, and here's a link we can put in the show notes. My understanding, though, when talking earlier, you have a gift for our listeners.
Oh, I do. Now, if you go to my website, drjeffnorman.com, no period, just drjeffnorman, you can download a workbook. It's a free copy of the Burnout book, So you'll recognize this, but instead of it being in book form, it's a PDF in a workbook form, because then you can take notes and work through that, because it's designed as an action book, right? You've got to do to make some changes, and you can download that for free. Also, if you will want to contact me at jeff@drjeffnorman.com, I would be happy to send you a copy of my book I think we charge $9 for shipping and handling, and I'll send you the book in book form. Because if you're like me, I write all over books and I highlight everything and I go back and read them again. And then thirdly, Jason, I'll have to get this to you. I have another QR code or another link there where you can download the first 3 or 2 chapters of the laughter book. That's already prepared and out there for people to see, so they get a taste of what that book's about. And we've got all of that. So I'll provide that for you after this link. I forgot all about that till just this moment.
No, that's great. And everyone will put that in the show notes. Take advantage of this. I have read the Burnout book. It's good. It's good. And it will improve your life. I promise you that, as the host or whatever credibility I have. Scott, are we about to the done? What last words do we have here? Go ahead.
I would just say, bringing it full circle. Remember what it's all for, what all the work's for. I was told a story recently about 2 fishermen, 2 friends, who used to go out on the beach and fish all the time. And as they grew older, the one decided to go to college and become an investment banker. Started working 120 hours a week, started skipping holidays, all of this. And he came back home to this small little village to visit his friend, and sees him at a bar and starts talking to him all, life's good, I've got all this money, yada, yada, yada. And he asks him, he's like, what have you been doing? His friend's like, well, I still fish all day. I go home, I eat dinner with my family and play with my kids. And this investment banker then asks his friends, like, you could be doing so much more. You could go out in the world. You could become an investment banker. But why don't you? And he's like, well, what's the point? What's the point of all that money? And he looks like, what are you going to do when it's all said and done? And the investment banker's like, I'm going to come home. I want to fish, have a good meal with my friends and family, and play with my kids. And so it's at that point where he retires and goes home. So if your pursuit of business or money is getting in the way of your actual destiny, as Dr. Norman's put it, don't let it get in the way. It should be enhancing your life. Jason, anything from you?
No, that was fabulous, Scott. That was a proud dad moment.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Norman, it's fun to see you again. Thank you so much for coming on. If for any of our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Dr. Norman, we will put all of his links in the show notes down below, plus your gift. So make sure to click on that. If you'd like to connect with Jason or I, feel free to hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, your choice on social media. We're there. And remember, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Really helps out with the algorithms these days. Last, remember, mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.